Now welcome today's host, Mark Taylor.
Well, hey everybody, welcome to another episode of the Seeking the City podcast that is dedicated to cultivating healthy disciple-making churches to make disciples right here in West Georgia and beyond. And I'm excited about another conversation with you. Thank you for taking the time to listen in. Today's topic will be enhancing the lives of struggling youth. And we've got a special guest with us today. Joining us in the conversation is Demarcus Copeland, who is the founder of MPACK, and he's going to tell us a little bit about that. But he's a husband and author, certified life coach here in West Georgia. He's also the founder and, like I said, CEO of MPACK, and he's going to tell us what that name means. It's a nonprofit organization here in Carrollton, Georgia, where he lives out his passion of bringing out the very best, absolute best of youth that are dealing with sometimes the most absolute worst situations. And Demarcus has an extensive experience with at-risk youth and with therapeutic education, and is, of course, life coaching, interactions, interventions. We're excited to have you here because I've known you for a while, so I wanted to have this conversation with you. I think youth growing up, it's said that in violent, abusive, and in a traumatic environment are tormented daily and every day affected for the rest of their lives, really. Wouldn't you say?
Before the intervention, they can be.
And that's known as adverse childhood experiences, or ACEs.
Yep, adverse child experiences.
Which is kind of the core of what you do, is helping these kids and teens and even their parents that may have kind of grown up with this.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then, so that's kind of the core of what you do. But just tell us a little bit about MPACK, because I think that MPACK has a unique opportunity to provide these perspectives, and I think also preventative measures and these interventions, prevention, maybe factors for these students and their families, right? Dealing with adverse childhood experiences, and then to help alleviate some of the severe, I guess, effects.
Yeah, long term.
That
could possibly be long term.
All right.
One thing about us is, like, it stands for Molding Passionate, Active, Creative Kids. And a lot of people look at our logo, but they don't really understand our logo. And our logo has depth to it that I don't always talk about. But I've had this theory for quite some time, even since I started MPACK, that Maslow's hierarchy of needs is fantastic, and it has been. But if you know anything about psychology, everything has most psychological experiments have a placebo or something that they're using as a motivator for whatever they're doing the experiment on, let's say rats or something of that nature. But society has changed, and the placebo that affects our youth today is household challenges, but also social media and stuff like that. So our logo, if you look at it, it's a box, and it's on my back. So, like, if you see it on my back, like, it's a box, right? And so it's self-awareness, mindfulness, and wholeness. And what that stands for is, when we look at children, we understand that we have to imagine them being in a box. And so that box is them, and everybody's talking around them, but they don't really have a lot of self-actualization. Now, in Maslow's hierarchy of needs, actualization is at the top of the pyramid, which is, and so.
And what exactly, for those that may be listening, what would be considered self-actualization?
It's kind of like when you have gotten to the point where your basic needs are met and you can actually be creative and go out and seek the life you want. And so, and
is that more of a self-awareness of the person themselves?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And so with Dr. Abraham Maslow, his study was on the art of being, or, self-awareness. Yep. And so, but to get to that point, in order for a person to get to that point of self-awareness, basic needs have to be met: food, water, shelter, sense of belonging, your household needs, and your friendships. These are things that need to be met before you get to the point where you can self-actualize. For specifically Project 2025, they refer to housing authority as an intergenerational poverty trap, and which means you don't get out of it once you get in it. And in our local housing authority, there are generations, after generations that have not moved out and went anywhere else. And so poverty is considered an adverse childhood experience, not having basic needs met, which is also a Maslow's hierarchy of needs pyramid. So, as you grow up, not having access is huge, because not having access, it almost creates this mindset of, well, if I don't have access, then I don't know how to get access.
And what are they not getting access to that's so crucial to their development?
I feel like when you're in poverty, you don't typically move, right? So the access of the mind, having the ability to freely think, oh, I don't have to live here, that doesn't exist. Like the freedom,
as though there's options.
Yeah, there's no options. This is it. This is all I've ever seen. This is all I've ever known. And until someone gives me a different point of reference, I'll never know anything else.
Okay.
And that is how you get generations living within that same space and no one ever moving out. And since the beginning, we've always wanted to target housing authorities. So what we like to do as an organization is create a point of reference beyond where they are. So we give them opportunities to go out and experience things, and we teach them golf, chess, financial literacy, and public speaking. We give them access to college students who can tell them about what they're majoring in, and they can talk about their thesis, and they can even do experiments, not experiments necessarily, but they can even do projects with the kids. Like we had art therapy for some of our students who are majoring in psychology. They want to do art therapy. So, and it's fantastic for both sides, because you got the college student who can actually see, would this really work? And then you got the student who is like, wow, I've never got to experience art in this way. So that's what we aim towards, because if we give these kids a point of reference, they're no longer boxed in. And so now they can look beyond that box and they become self-aware. Oh, I'm a person, and I play a role in my own life, and I can hear my own voice, and I can breathe, and I exist, and someone sees me. And so now they become mindful. Okay, what do I do beyond this? Do I want to feel around and see what my box has in it? Oh, you know what? I don't have a dad, or I don't have a mom, or my mom died, or my dad died, or we live in poverty, or my mom has a mental illness. Oh, okay. What is available in the world that I could have access to help me with this? And that's when they go outside of the box and become whole. And so you have self-awareness, mindfulness, wholeness. Wholeness is when they go out of that box of trauma and have access to this entire world around them and know how to use it, and not just be a person looking for someone to just get something. They want to go out and earn something and be in charge of their own intervention. So one of the beautiful things about our program being in the housing authority is the kids are almost 100% in charge of their own intervention, because we tell them the time, we tell them the schedule, and all they have to do is get there. And most of our kids walk to our building because we're in that 1 mile radius of their housing authority. And so they're in charge of their own intervention. And we're doing wraparound services this year where we're going to provide behavior health checks, nursing assessments, and we're going to provide therapy through other companies who are going to provide licensed therapists to these children so that they can get all of their needs met. And so it's a fantastic thing. You don't have to live in a housing authority or in poverty to have an adverse childhood experience, because the first studies were done on white suburban families in California. So it's like there's so much new data that hasn't even been checked out yet. But the studies show that 1 in 6 adults have at least an ACE score of 1.
Okay.
So that's everybody. 1 out of 6 adults have at least.
And what is the scoring? Explain that a little bit more.
So it goes 1 to 10. And the scores are like, they ask you a series of 10 questions. And for each question that you say yes to, you mark a tally. And for each question you say no to, you don't have to mark anything.
And these type of questions are based on
what are they incarcerated?
Okay.
These were common things picked up on when they did a study over 17,000 different individuals.
And they're trying to, what was the purpose of this study? What were they wanting
It was
to know?
specifically to see long-term health outcomes.
Okay.
And how long-term health outcomes relate to what they're going through as a child. And so they were doing routine checkups, and these routine checkups they were finding that common thread were these 10 questions.
Okay.
And so based on these 10 questions, you find, oh, well, this person has cardiovascular disease, right? But what adverse child experience did they go through? And the main thing is how it changes your neural pathways and your cortisol levels. It's very unhealthy to be stressed out a lot. So when you grow up in a home, it shapes long-term health outcomes. But it shapes long-term health outcomes depending on what you go through.
Abuses, fears,
All
very
of that.
traumatic experiences.
Yes, and how you deal with stress.
Not just stress causes stress, but also could be some physical health problems. And
absolutely.
All
But the
kinds
health
of things
problems
come out.
come from the stress because it's not healthy for you to go in fight or flight all the time. That's if you're facing something very dangerous.
For any of us.
Yeah, for any of us.
And definitely when you think about a child.
Yeah.
And the kids you work with are what ages?
7 to 14.
So a 7 to 14-year-old going through this,
Mm-hmm.
and we can't expect them to know and have the tenacity or to have the resilience
Exactly.
to be able to come out of that in a healthy way without a community around them.
You won't.
With support around them,
Yes.
with structure, with life skill, someone
Without
investing
intervention.
in their life
90% of the time,
to show them a
child
better way
doesn't
or a
get an
different way.
intervention. Yeah, if they don't get an intervention, nothing will change.
And was it a circumstance? What was it that then ultimately allowed you to come to the decision of, I've got to start MPACK to do something for these kids? What was that?
Boys and Girls Club closed in our community. And when it closed, I started making calls to see what it took to get it open, what it took to keep it open, and just wasn't getting any response. So I looked at that as a moment where God was saying, if you want to do this, you can. I've given you the knowledge. If you want to launch this program, now is the time. And I had already written it down, but I was creating MPACK to go into the school system. But the school system was kind of hesitant because of my non-traditional training, not having the doctorate or all that jazz. It kind of hurts your marketing for yourself. So when the Boys and Girls Club closed, we needed it still in our community because kids need someone's shoulders to stand on so that they can see further than their own situation. And that's the key to a point of reference. So MPACK is more than just the after school program and a summer camp because we do more than any other program that I've ever seen. And I've worked with a lot of after school youth dominated programs, and I've never seen, I specifically created MPACK to do way more than I've ever seen any program. And our mission is to provide intervention and early supports for students and, adolescents who suffer with adverse child experiences. Our goal long term is to provide this, program everywhere and in whatever spaces that we can, at little to no cost to us, because we want it to be at little to no cost to the parents. A really good, healthy program eliminates all the barriers, and that's always been our goal. The average cost on our sheet is the average cost of after school is $85 a week. The average cost of summer camp is $166 a week. The average cost of MPACK for after school is $0.00. The average cost of summer camp for MPACK per student is $0.00. The parents pay nothing. Even if we got it or don't got it, we never want to create a barrier, because when you're working with a certain demographic or population of people, you have to eliminate the barriers, because those barriers may be the very reason that they say, no, my child can't come. And if the child needs it, no shouldn't even be in the conversation. So as it relates to your question, what does it look like behind the scenes? It's a lot of work. It's a
And you
lot
were
of work.
in a temporary space in Carrollton and called the Tunnel.
Yep.
And was an awesome space. But then you provided where you're at now, and that allowed you to do what? Different than what you were doing before.
So we're in partnership with the housing authority in our community, which has always been our goal. And it allows us to have more kids.
In the west end of Carrollton.
Yes. And where we were before, we were on the side of like a busy intersection. So kids couldn't walk. Every child would have to be transported, dropped off, and picked up. So they would have to come by their parents and be picked up by their parents. We didn't have a huge amount we didn't have the number of kids that we really wanted. And so by moving into the housing authority, we have access to not only the kids that need it the most, but they're within walking distance of their own intervention. So it's huge. And for our future model, it will always be what we look for.
And I think it was like their community center.
Yes, their community
that really
center.
was being used, but not to its potential.
Sure. Yeah, you can say that. I think by law, every housing authority has to have a community center.
Okay.
But they don't have to provide programs.
Okay.
They just have to have a center for their community. And that's amazing. Thank God that, they put that in there. One of our goals is to plant as many blueberry trees as we can in that little space that.
Why is that? Why blueberries?
Well, blueberries.
We're Peach State.
Well, we are Peach State, but peaches, before you get a harvest, it takes about.
We're in Georgia, for those that don't know.
Yeah, it takes about 10 years to harvest a peach. Maybe a little less. I remember my granddad planted peach trees when I was growing up, and I never ate a single one of those peaches because they never grew. But blueberries are almost like a weed.
You were in college by the time they started growing the orchard.
Yeah, they never had a peach. But blueberries grow like a weed. You can get a harvest out of a blueberry after 5 years. So our goal is to allow these kids, health is changing, and kids in poverty don't typically have access to whole foods. They have access to a lot of non-traditional whole foods where they look whole, but they're not whole. So we want every space we get, we want to hold on to those spaces, but we want to plant a rich variety of fruits and vegetables so that even if they don't have food in their house, they can go out and pick enough blueberries to get their daily vitamins that they need. And that's important to me because a kid can't grow if they don't have the nutrients. You got so many kids being diagnosed with diabetes and stuff at an early age. And that was like when I was young, you got diagnosed maybe at 40 and 50. You've got people being diagnosed with diabetes at 9, 10, 11. And to me, it's because they don't have access to what they need nutritiously so that they can grow up healthy and thrive. So we want to plant blueberries because blueberries are easy and they are packed with antioxidants, and that'll help them, fight cancers and stuff.
I look forward to having some of those. Yeah. I know there was a guy you're very familiar with, and Robert W. Block, and when he said, children's exposure to adverse childhood experiences is the greatest public health threat of our time. Mm-hmm. How do you think that statement really kind of shaped your mission?
Well, a lot of people don't understand how common they are. It's almost like mosquito bites. West Nile virus wasn't bad because it was the West Nile virus. It was bad because of how common mosquitoes are. And so it's like, even if you want to avoid it, there's realistically no way of avoiding getting bit by a mosquito. So I remember growing up, my dad would tell us, you can't go outside because there's the West Nile virus. And if you do go outside, you got to wear off. And eventually it died down and it wasn't a big thing. But adverse childhood experiences will never die down. They're like mosquitoes. It's small, but they're so common that there's no getting around it at this point.
Someone shows up at your space there at the community center, one thing they'll definitely see is this is very organized. Yeah, everything's in place.
Yeah,
but they're having fun, right? Mm-hmm. But everything's in place and it's so clean. And I remember you saying, "Wow, one little intervention could be that they're coming from a dirty environment,
absolutely,
and then all of a sudden they're coming here and they can count on certain things." It's going to be clean.
Yep.
People are going to be friendly.
Yep.
People are going to be smiling.
Yep.
They're going to have fun.
Yep.
They're going to have people encouraging them
Yep.
and loving on them.
Yep. And a lot
And
of
that's
them
what I
talk.
saw. And it's like when I got around it, man, it's infectious because
Yeah.
they get around. These kids are so, like, you just see it in their faces. It's like their demeanor changes. Man, you don't know what they're dealing with before they came. But as soon as they come in here, you said, hey, when you come in here, you can expect these things. And that's only for your good.
And
And you're hoping they experience more good
Yeah.
than they're experiencing bad. And maybe that good will outweigh the light shining brighter than the darkness it come
Exactly.
from. Maybe you're hoping will be the lasting thing.
Yep.
The Bible says that the Word of God is the light into our path, the lamp into our feet, and the light into our path. And so it's the light, Jesus being that light in our life, man, that gives us hope. If we can give that hope to other people, so that kind of is a transition, I think is a good way to kind of talk about, if I were to be a church leader, if I were to be a church in a community and a part of the faith community, how is that? How is people listening in on this conversation thinking, man, we don't know kids like that, in our church. We're not ministering to kids like that in our community, but maybe they could be involved in some way that they could at least say, hey, these are our neighbors. These families do exist. Mom and dads that are raising these kids, man, they're struggling. They're in our motels. They may not have homes of their own. But they're just trying to get by with with the income they're making and jobs and all the things that, again, some of us that we take for granted that are shaping their lives in a way that is not a positive experience. It's not a positive environment. But if we could give hope, and I see you giving hope, but not just hope, you're giving them a different mindset and perspective. You're renewing their minds, you're renewing their emotions and things, and you're taking them where they are and then saying, okay, but I can show you a different way. And in that different way, then maybe that self-awareness and then building confidence and looking at being able to look at their futures much brighter than maybe that, hey, I'm just going to be stuck. This is what my life will always be like.
Yep.
And maybe some of the parents of these kids you have in your program, maybe it's because they didn't have an impact. They didn't have a Demarcus Copeland in their life. And so now they've got kids and they're trying to do the best they can. So I love that you take it beyond the kids. It's also, man, your program's also, your mission's also for the parents.
Yeah, it's free childcare. If nothing else, childcare is very expensive. So
And maybe it's changing those homes.
yeah, it is. We've seen it. We've seen it in a little time. We've seen parents get different jobs because they have time now. I've seen parents in that community say, oh, well, since he's going to be there till 7, I can work a longer shift. I've seen parents taking new jobs because they have childcare.
I heard yesterday at a church service, I try to go and visit different churches, in the community and to get to know them and them get to know Seeking the City. And I was with a church that new pastor. It's been a couple months. And I remember in his sermon, he was saying that, not all of us can do not one of us can do it all, but it takes all of us doing a little. And then somebody else yesterday afternoon said this, it's amazing how much people will pay for 2 things, hope and dope. Now, which one is better for you? And so I think you're just trying to provide that hope, and that's an awesome thing.
Yeah.
That's interesting. You brought up scripture, and I thought about a couple of scriptures. If I were to be able to care for or minister to, if it was a neighbor that I knew, if I was be able to sit down with a mom and dad, if I was sit down with one of these children, and I would encourage the churches and the faith community here when they're looking at these communities and what they can do to make a difference. I think that, looking at Seeking the City and the Seeking the City podcast, again, we want to be able to help cultivate healthy disciple-making churches to go and, yes, through city outreach and community transformation, ultimately, that they're making disciples of Jesus, but they're also making a difference here in West Georgia. How can they make a difference? And I thought about a couple of scriptures, and when I thought about Psalm 34:17 through 19, when the righteous cry for help, the Lord hears and delivers them out of all their troubles. Man, that's good news. And that the Lord is near to the brokenhearted and saves the crushed in spirit. Many are the afflictions of the righteous. You deal with some kids, families that deal with afflictions of many kinds and challenges, but the Lord that delivers them out of all of them. And then in Matthew 9:35-38, and Jesus went throughout all of the cities and villages, teaching in their synagogues and proclaiming the gospel, the good news of the kingdom, and healing every disease and every affliction. And when he saw the crowds, man, this is awesome. He had compassion on them. And that's what it really took for you. It was something that caused you to live beyond yourself. Yeah, you could have just maybe grew up and developed into management, and later maybe even been a franchise owner of Little Caesars. Maybe you could have been a teacher in the school system. There's a lot of things you could have chosen in life. Maybe become a professional golfer if you'd have pursued it, because I heard you were pretty good. But you chose to actually, to start MPACK and to take a different path in life, and I'm glad you did. But it says that he had compassion on them because they were harassed and helpless. You know any of those kids? They feel harassed, helpless, and that they were like sheep without a shepherd. And that he said to his disciples, the harvest is plentiful, but the laborers are few. Therefore, pray earnestly to the Lord of the harvest to send out laborers into the harvest. And so that's what you need, right? I mean, you need people to come alongside of you, support you financially, with their time, with their abilities, but come and volunteer, love on these kids. Now, there's a process to them coming to be a part of it, and you can help them with that. If they have interest, you'll get them involved in some way. They can help out. But if there's churches, again, they're looking at our neighbors to help us not just be good neighbors as churches, but I think also to be able to, again, fulfill the Great Commission's purpose of going and making disciples of Jesus and caring for their neighbors. I think Ephesians 1-2, if you were to summarize it, it's an interesting 2 chapters because it tells me who I am in Christ Jesus. And I think what's interesting about that is maybe these kids, they don't know what God created them for or that they could be. But through you, you're showing them what they could be and what maybe God had intended, but they may not have ever realized if they hadn't met you, if they hadn't been a part of your program. I am chosen. I am holy and blameless before him. I am redeemed. I am forgiven. I have an inheritance. I have a purpose in him. I am transformed. I am part of the family of God. I am saved by grace through faith in Jesus. Man, if someone would have told me that as a small child, and thank God they did, but there are some kids, they don't know that they could have that life.
And you just said a huge, deep thing. Am I all that God intended for me to be? That's what a question did he create? Anybody can.
For what purpose did he create me for?
Yeah,
right. And that was to bring him glory in all we do. But some kids, because of the things that they are going through and may go through, that if there isn't someone showing them a different way,
or that other question
may not have that
for those,
ability.
Those kids, they might say, "Am I ever going to be what God intended me to be?" Am I ever going to be what God intended me to be? Because I don't see any hope.
Is it even possible?
Is it even possible?
And we could all say that for ourselves.
Yeah.
We all need each other to be able to encourage each other in that.
Yeah.
And to be able to help along life to say, let's help each other live that. That's good stuff. And I think as we close today, I know that you've written a book, man. This is awesome. It's more than just the organization. You're an author.
Yeah.
And you've kind of taken your life knowledge and experiences, and you've put it in this book for teachers only.
And that could be any teacher.
A lesson planned for life. Tell me about that, and what benefit could this be? Now, it says for teachers only.
Yeah, exactly. So when you look at it from the perspective of teachers, but we are literally all called to be teachers. We are all called to reach one and teach one.
Okay.
So if anybody is looking to reach one and teach one, that's a place to start, because you have to be what you need from you. And I specifically cater to teachers because teachers are out there, but that book can go for anybody, because the principles that I put in there is for people who just want to be involved in helping, especially as it relates to youth. And, I use the school system as an example because it was the most readily available example of where the teachers are, what do they deal with on a daily basis, and how do they connect with their students. But anybody can read it that wants to be a teacher, but I specifically wrote it for teachers because they deal with a lot right now, especially with just how schools are changing. So yeah, they call you an author when you write a book, but I just had a lot on my mind and I wanted to get it out.
No, this is a really good read, and I would encourage anybody that's watching to, and we'll provide a way for you to get a copy of this, be able to find this. But a lot of people don't know. I mean, they just see that you're providing life skills for these kids, but you're being a certified life coach. You could be a professional certified life coach for those professionals, those people in our community, teachers or whoever.
Yep.
You have a lot of knowledge, things that you could pass on that may help them in their classrooms, with their own families, but definitely in their classrooms and in their communities. Anybody that is someone that works with kids in whatever way, trying to make a difference in their life and give them a better life, there's things that you speak to this, and so I want to make sure, and we'll have a way right at the end here that we can tell people how to reach you. But I think that this has been an interesting conversation. I think it'll be just the beginning. I think that it'll be some conversations come out of this with those that are listening in that they may have with others. They want to reach out to you and they want to learn more, and we certainly want them to be able to do that. So, and just kind of looking back at what we've talked about, you have an organization, MPACK. You're working with kids with adverse childhood experiences, and then you are available to the community and churches, even in the school systems. Anybody that works with kids, that you could come in and kind of share your knowledge and your expertise in some of these life enrichment and interventions and many things I think that you could provide, I think especially related to wellness.
Yeah. I launched a company this year called Aces to Ace.
Okay.
And that's
Tell me about that.
It's related to my life coaching, but it's catered towards people, adults who grew up with adverse childhood experiences, and they may need life coaching now. They may need intervention now. So it's for, if you just take an ACE test, you figure out whether you have 3 or more. And a lot of people don't know, if you have 3 or more ACEs, your life expectancy drops down to 55.
Even health.
Just health, the health expectations, the health outcomes. So we launched Aces to Ace, as a company that just allows people to get life coaching as an adult who have adverse childhood experiences.
That's good stuff. Well, we want to make sure that you know how to be connected with Demarcus long after this conversation. This is just the first step. I think now is to have people act upon what they've just heard, and hopefully it will move someone to say, how can I get connected? How can I be involved? What can I do? So we want to make sure you know how to do that. So I thank you for taking the time again, just listening to this conversation. And I think that all the links that are going to be available to all your social media platforms, your website, your resource, your great book, and how people can get a hold of that, and then how they can schedule you to come and speak at one of their events or to their organization, company, whatever it may be. We'll make available in the show notes. You'll have that there. It'd be easy. And now stay tuned as we wrap up today. Look forward to the next time that we're with you, the next episode. But listen to this quick announcement, and we'll see you again soon.
That'll do it for this episode. Thank you for listening to and supporting the Seeking the City podcast. Now, if you like the sound of this, please subscribe to this podcast. If you want your question answered or have a topic you'd like us to discuss on a future episode, send us a message at connect@seekingthecity.org.